So, a warm welcome to everyone for our PCQuest 35 years journey from 1987 to 2022. Today, we will be discussing the future of assistive technologies. And there is no one better qualified to talk on this issue than Mr. Som Mittal, former president and chairman of NASSCOM. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mittal.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunil. Look forward. Yeah. And thank you for picking up this topic. I think it's an important one. And through PCQuest, I'm sure that we'll reach many more people, and there are many things to be done. And I hope our message goes across.
Definitely. This is very relevant, and it's going to be very useful going forward in the future. So I look forward to hearing your views. Now, you have been associated with assistive technology and assistive issues from quite some back. For example, in 2010, NASSCOM had formed the Disability Advisory Group, DAG, which looked into things like text size, contrast, AV format, and assistive devices. You are part of that. You are also a trustee of the National Center for Promotion of Employment for Disabled People. So maybe if you can start with the problems related to assistive technologies in the past and how they've evolved till the present date and the achievements we have so far, then we can maybe go forward.
Yeah, I think just to put context to all this, India, with its population, we have a fairly large number of people with disabilities. There is no data that is around. The government believes that we have 2.5% of our population which is disabled. Our view is it is probably 7.5%. This is the view that World Bank, WHO also has. Recent act that was passed in 2016 started recognizing 21 disabilities when earlier we were only looking at 8 disabilities. So the problem is large. And if you can imagine 8 crore people at least who are disabled, that's a very sizable population. In addition to people who have congenital issues from birth, etc., we also have now aging population, people who become disabled due to either age, accidents, or whatever, which makes the population even larger. So the issues of disabled are very, very many. So when we formed the DAG in NASSCOM, our main approach was, how can accessibility be dealt with? Now, accessibility is physical access. It is access to technology. It is access to education. It is access to employment. So if you look at it, these people who are disabled should have access. So what they don't need. So up till now, the way that we have looked at disability has always been like charity, right? We would donate stuff. We would give charity for the blind, for the hearing impaired, and so on. But we would never address. So we found that the people with disabilities don't need charity. I think they need to be treated and be inclusive. So when we look at assistive technologies, for us, the main criteria is that making them inclusive to the society rather than excluding them out. Now, you can define assistive technologies in a lot of ways. So I would actually split them into 2 things, right? One is, why should everything not be designed in a manner that is accessible? So for example, if we design buildings, right, should they normally not have ramps in addition to steps? Should the toilet doors not be wide enough? Should railway compartments should be wide enough to have a wheelchair go in? Believe me, all this doesn't work, right? So there are many assistive technologies which don't cost you money. It is about following certain standards. Let me give you another example. In the elevator, if you have 24 floors, a person on a wheelchair will probably be able to only press the first few buttons. So can the panel not be at a height which is accessible? Now, these don't cost money, but it is about following certain standards. So with the help of NCPDP and many others in the sector, we were able to change the National Building Code. Now, National Building Code is an advisory board, right? It makes suggestions, it gives designs, but it's not mandatory. So the question for us is those technologies which are universal in design, right, should be adopted. I'll take a pause for any question that you have and then move on.
So, from what you said, I like two things very much. So, one is that it's an 8.5 crore population. So I think there are two issues here. One is it's an issue of governance, that as the government, as the people, we have to cater to these 8.5 crore. Also, it is an 8.5 crore market. See, at the end of the day, it is also a market. So I like that one issue. And second issue is, what I like is there is no single size fits all. So why can't why can't the mobile fit to everyone? So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Even like we talk, even in the dark, I should be able to see it. So I mean,
Right.
I like these two issues which you talked. If you can maybe elaborate on that.
So just to take this forward, and this is a complex issue, so we should actually break this up into. So first is, why? So when we make footpaths, we pave the footpaths. If you put a tile, which is a tactile tile, right, then a person with a walking stick can be guided with it. It doesn't cost you money, right? So there are, when we make an ATM to speak, right? So when a person is entering some data using either Braille or whatever else, right, speaking can be done easily. The reason that NASSCOM got involved, DAG got involved, everything is becoming digital. So when we are talking about websites, are the websites accessible? So why are we denying access to a website or a payment system? Believe me, it is the last thought that comes to mind, right? There are standards available, even the main IT companies, the product people, who, if they do consider disability, and like you said, it's a market, why are you denying yourself a market of 8.5 crores because your products are not accessible to them, right? So I think that's one big area that we need to do, and we should stop giving lip service. I think just by saying I've got a ramp and I've got my toilets which are accessible is only addressing physical disability. It does not address the issues of the hearing impaired, vision impaired, and of course the other major ones which relate to mental health as well. So I think that's one part of stuff. So I would say the easiest thing that we could do and must do, you talked about governance, government websites themselves are not accessible. So the first that we can lead, the good news is that the Ministry of Information Technology is doing it. They have laid down standards, but I think there needs to be done with a missionary zeal because you are denying access to these people. We had the same issues with the election commission, right? They took it very seriously. 8.5 crore, maybe out of them, at least 6 crores are voters. You have to take care of them in a lot of ways. They've done a lot of stuff, but we did find that some of the booths were on the 3rd floor without a lift or a ramp, right? So you provided everything else for the disabled, but ignored this. So that's one kind of stuff. The other is, like you said, not one style can meet all because the needs are different, right? The physically impaired need have different needs as compared to visually impaired, as compared to hearing impaired. I would say that a lot of assistive technologies came in all these 3 areas. So we do have wheelchairs, right? We do have certain canes. But even there is no standardization. There is a lot of work that's happening globally. Many devices have been made, but it's just becoming unaffordable in the Indian context. I would just like to point out here that if you take the 7.5% that I mentioned, their economic strata unfortunately, is lower than the country average, right? They are in the rural areas. They have also the burden of a caregiver because they are not independent in a sense. So the affordability of these technologies, so when we look at it from the Indian context, even when we come up with these designs and new products and new assistive technologies, one clear thing has to be about how can we make them affordable? And when we look at a lot of good devices that are internationally available, we will find that these have many other features which, if taken out, can reduce the cost. So I think there is need for us to develop these devices or adopt them to be suitable for Indian market. Let me give you an example. There are a large number of people who are disabled who think they are blind but actually have cataract, right? Now, providing cataract surgery in the country becomes very expensive. They are in the village, etc. Now, there are people who have managed this. So the Arvind Eye Hospital has actually broken up the process with a single torch and a trained professional. They're able to diagnose whether a person, without having come to the city, they diagnose whether he is ready, cataract, whether he is ready for a surgery or not. Then they get the person. They have mastered the art of how they can conduct surgeries, and they also make the lens themselves. When the lenses cost $100 internationally, they are now producing the same lens, as good a lens, I would say, for $2 or less, right? So I think there is a market. We don't need to compromise on quality, but we don't need all the bells and whistles that are required. And I think we need to design more. So I think there is a focus that's required to get it done. But there are other issues, right? We find that there are many startups, many people who are doing innovative ideas, and they come up with, we in NCPDP, which I chair now, we give every year awards for universal design. People who are designing products which are, and there have been some amazing products, but we'll probably have, I would have think 5 different people who made innovative walking canes, right? So that some had lights, some would talk, some would do whatever, but they never got commercialized, right? The ideas remained in the lab. IITs have done it, NID has done it, individuals have designed, but they don't see the daylight in terms of a commercial production, right? So obviously, right, the penchant among investors is less. These people also who did design maybe got some awards and all that and left it there. So I think from lab to commercialization, there is a hand-holding that's required. And I think it takes both the government and the industry to get together and do it. One of the missing pieces, Sunil, that we have found in this, and there is the disability sector has a very nice expression which says, nothing about us without us, right? So please, you are designing a cane, but you never ask me whether this cane is suitable for me, right? So please address my problems. Please take me. So today, I think there is to be a far more inclusive collaboration between the disabled, and there are many organizations like NCPDP, and there are institute, this disability sector has disability-wise focused groups that are there. There are support groups. So I think we need a different approach of that collaboration that comes in. So there's no point of, discovering the key and then keep looking out for a lock to open, right? So I think there is some good work happening. USA, for example, has an association for assistive technologies, right? So they get the standards, they get a place. So I think we have problems of commercialization. I don't think we have dearth of ideas. I think there is a lack of marketplace. So today, I cannot go to a single place where, and again, I'm reminded by what you said, if we have 8 crore people and they're looking for something to help them, right? Why can't somebody come out with an e-com market? Because each individual cannot find. And believe me, there are so many products that are available. Many of them are international products, which are just free of cost. There are tools for rehabilitation, which are very important. I think all of them will start making sense.
So again, continuing to what you have said, I'm just thinking aloud. I mean, like you say, the solutions are there. They just get awards. Then we need to design more. So, like, for example, there were environmental issues. Instead of like when a building happens, instead of doing rain harvesting, they're saying you have to do rain harvesting with the construction of the building. So I'm just thinking aloud, like you have these 21 disabilities. Can you say that, okay, when you make a building, take all 21 into mind? When you're designing a product, take 21 into mind, because at least in technology they can do anything. So instead of like baking a cake and then adding the ingredients, is it possible through some legislation?
Yeah. So there are limitations, I think, like you said. So if we if we make a spreadsheet of disabilities and what they need, right, some of them are common, right? Whether it is a person with physical disability or visual, they need particular building standards that you can do. But for example, somebody who is hearing impaired, for him, the building is accessible, right? Because he or she does not need, they can see and they can walk. So I think there are needs that are a bit different. But you're right that whatever is standard, that is why we call it a universal design, right? So universal design now, just putting up a ramp, which you need 3 people to push a wheelchair up, doesn't make sense, right? I mentioned to you width of the doors. It doesn't cost you more. I'll give you an example of, so there is a counter question saying, okay, the number of people who are disabled, maybe X percentage, right? So should we add cost to the all? I saw a very good example of this in Japan. So the bullet train, right, is accessible. Now, they don't need to have all compartments accessible. The central compartment, right, is fully accessible, right? The chance that there are so many people who are disabled are traveling and will need the whole train is very low. There is only in that one particular compartment that somebody comes and puts a ramp between the platform and the compartment. So they have been able to address. So I think it is the thought which is more important than anything else. So you're quite right. We were discussing this in a bank, that today when ATM is there, today majority of the stuff is handled, digital banking, financial inclusion is happening. But you still have to go to the bank's branch sometimes. So, but the branch happens to be in a marketplace, there is no ramp, right? Okay, we can understand that particular market, but can you ensure that at least in a city, 10% of your branches are accessible? Or if you had just one branch in a city or a small place, that is accessible. And can you at least put it on your website to say that this branch is accessible or not? So today, is it assistive technologies? Yes, because I don't have to go to a branch to find out whether it was accessible or not. It was simple. I just went to their website and saw it. So I think there are so many solutions, but at the same time, if I look at this phone that I have and your phone, I don't know whether you've ever been through the settings. There is a setting in these phones called assistive, right? Accessibility, rather, it calls it. If you switch that on, then the phone actually speaks out the text. The visuals get increased. in many cases, a very small app speaks out the color. I must just mention that we did an event in Bangalore, and one of the speakers that we had was fully visually impaired. And this person traveled from Bombay to Bangalore. I asked him if he could help. He says, no, I travel all over the world. And he was the best dressed person in the room. He was wearing coordinated clothes, and I did ask him. His name is Ankur. He's very involved with us, and he said, "No, I use this tool, which tells me when I point it out to my tie and my shirt, it tells me the color." Right. So if you have seen a lens that people wear, and with AI, it's able to recognize. It will, when you come in front, it will recognize you and tell me, speak it out, saying, "I think Sunil Rajguru is coming. He's wearing a red check shirt." So this is technology, right? And as long as you're connected and the country is getting connected, some of these technologies can be scaled. And even for a moment, if they're not scaled, then why cannot all these large companies, right, take this as part of, I won't call it CSR, but price it suitably. You don't have to make the same percentage margin on these products. So, and I think similarly, the government has to encourage these people. We hear of all kinds of funds. We hear it is sometimes it's bizarre. For example, in Bangalore, there were people who were modifying the vehicles, Uber vehicles, for example, to be able to, or Ola cars for that matter, to be able to slide the chair out so that somebody can come and sit, or make a ramp at the back so that we can roll up a wheelchair inside. But if you make modifications of that nature, it needs the RTO approval. Why can't we make that process simple? Right. So I think there is a lot of work going on. I don't want to simplify it. It is a big problem, but I don't think it is getting the attention deserved. And I'm so happy that you are covering this topic in the 35th year. And I would be very interested in seeing that among all the other videos that you're going to put out, how many hits did this one get?
That would be interesting. So actually, you have given me a lot of food for thought. Like, for example, one thing you talked of cataract. So I was just thinking, we'll all grow old, we'll all get cataract. I may get injured in my leg. I may be carrying shopping bags. I may not be able to use my hands. So temporarily, at least all of us will require the accessibility option.
Sure.
So ideally, everything should have.
You're so right. So, this whole word disability,
yes,
again, it comes out of sympathy and this.
Right.
I think we have to move on. This is a reality. How come when we go internationally, we do see a lot of people around? The problem is quite large, Sunil, because these people with disabilities don't have access, physical access. They don't have digital access. They don't have access to education. These three being lacking, they don't have access to employment. And hence, in a lot of ways, the family livelihoods get suffered, right? We are creating, if we create jobs in the urban area, how are we going to provide family support in the urban areas? We are uprooting. So can we provide skills for the disabled that they can be done locally? If you recall, when the STD came in, right? Government did a super job where these STD booths were manned by people with disability, right? So now that BharatNet is reaching every village, can the kiosks, the PC kiosks, their printers there, be manned by people with disabilities so that these people do not have to So they can fill the forms, they can do digital literacy part for the rest of the villagers, they can provide the interface between the government and the service providers and the population. I think we have to think differently, right, of this large community. You know, we have so many divisions in this society. We talk about reservations, etc. You know, we found cases where government jobs were reserved, but the interview was happening on a floor which was not accessible. So I think when we look at assistive technologies, technologies will help us solve. I think the thought has to change. And how do we have our population get involved in this beyond charity?
I agree with you. One is the mindset, and one is after that we have to scale up. But I think finally we are living in a world where technology can scale up at a much faster rate. So I was thinking, like, one more thing you talked about, like a model office. Like, what if there was a model banking office? So I'm wondering if that is one way to go. I mean, you need, say, a model banking, which will take care of a model government office. Then once that people start using it, then the real issues, the real problems will come up and we could scale up. So do you think that's one way of going forward? You just have a model device, a model office, a model bank,
Yeah.
and would
So,
it work?
you
I
know,
don't know.
no, I think it does, right? So, for example, we give NCPDP has two very significant awards, right? One is Universal Design, which we talk about, people who have done amazing stuff to be making things like, and the other is Helen Keller Award, which is given to people who are doing something for employment. Clearly, people who are doing something for employment have created those model offices. So just to talk about our own sector, companies like Accenture and Emphasis and Wipro, right? And I'm just picking up the names that are coming top of my mind, right? They actually do a lot. They have a policy for the disabled. And it is not only about putting these devices, it's also creating awareness among people as to how to deal with people with disability, how to include them. They should not be going and eating their lunches separately from you, right? You should be part. So I think there is a lot of work that's happening today, but we need to go beyond just physical spaces, right? It's so, we are right now looking at creating a hub for assistive technologies. So why are we saying assistive technologies? Because just like we have many incubators, fintech incubators and health tech incubators, why not a assistive technology incubator where the standards are available, right? People are sharing the needs. We can get the users involved, right? Because if it is fragmented, and then we need people to fund it. And we should not say only government should fund the assistive technology companies. So given that, TIE does so much work and there are so many angel funds and VC funds, would they come up and said, okay, I'm doing tech funding, but 10% of my funding will go to assistive technologies. So unless they are participating in it, they will go for the next B2C unicorn, right? But there is a unicorn in the making in the assistive technology area as well.
So I like the sound of that assistive technologies incubator. I think we should just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I think we need to. And I think the one area that is missing is always getting the user involved. And I think that is where organizations like NCPDP and many other organizations in the sector can participate in this. We just have to raise the awareness and we have to move beyond giving lip service to the problem. There is to be let's take this case of vaccination. The data in, I think it was August this year, was that only 4,000 people with disabilities had got vaccinated. Right? Now, either you're not capturing the data or it is not. This is a question that was answered in the parliament. So I'm just taking the data from there. So the question is, those people are not, they can't walk across to a clinic and do it. So is there a different way to look at it, right? And again, whether you, so if there's a data that's there, which is again part of the technology, part of stuff coming in, we have, there is a pass that is given, a disability certificate that is issued, which can be used in the railways and so on and so forth. So if that is the case, then you have some access to them. But we need to find ways and means of reaching out to these people as well. Otherwise, for everything, you're excluding them. So I think the definition of assistive technologies is inclusive technology.
So I mean, this sounds like a great plan, and I'm sure. I mean, we are on the right track, because 20 years back you would not even discuss this, but now we are actually discussing actual solutions. So I'd like to move on. What are the technologies that can like, for example, you have speech. Then you could have GPS, which could help even with with a walking stick. You could have a GPS which could guide you. Then what about AI? So these are all the problems. What about the actual technologies like robotics, autonomous vehicles, AI? What are the actual technologies that could be used or are being used to assist?
So all the technologies that you mentioned will find application in the solutions that we have to do. For example, people who are hearing impaired actually are managing with sign languages, right? But sign languages means you need sign interpreters, right? Now, with AI, actually, I can reduce the number of people that I need as sign language interpreters, because I can convert the gestures into a robotic movement, and hence whatever I say or you say, a visual robotic can actually display it. But there is other technologies. By the way, people who are hearing impaired are not able to speak because they don't hear, but they have proper vocal cords, but they don't know how. So there are technologies which can actually make them speak, right? So now again, using AI, I can actually keep refining the language that's there, but we have gone into a comfort zone of sign language, right? So I think this has to be addressed disability by disability. People who have a stroke and they get disabled, right? Aphasia is the name, where they can't speak, right? But then using technology and making them see lip reading, etc. Again, technology will play a role in getting this done. The real issue is in cognitive areas, right? If you look at anything to do with cognitive, the only solution, right, besides counseling and hand-holding and all that, is actually these tools that are there. So if you look at the aphasia tools helping people pronounce, because you don't, what's the problem? Unfortunately, people lost their voice, or they can't speak, or they're speech impaired, or whatever. So you have therapists, but we are hugely short. So the problem is not disability, the problem is shortage of therapists. So now that can be replaced by technology, where you can assist the therapist be more productive by technology, right? So, I think it is endless. So every technology that you spoke about today, and I think while there is a lot of science that's coming up with 3D printing, I can actually make prosthetic, arms and legs, and prosthetics can be done with 3D printing. There are lots and lots of devices that you can make with 3D. That means you're customizing it to individuals' needs. But even just the digital technologies that you spoke about, right, I think have a role in each one of them. The question is, how does it get presented? How do you ensure there is awareness created for it? How do we ensure and train people to use them? Because you also need trainers for this purpose. So I think a very comprehensive approach has to be taken. Sunil, sometimes it's very frustrating because we have seen great ideas. Why is it not getting commercialized? I think there is money to make, but it gets lost somewhere because I think there is not enough hand-holding. Either people are looking for some very definitive project reports, but start somewhere and make it happen.
So it's been a very great talk, and actually it's my fault also. I never thought of a lot of the things you have talked. I mean, in that angle. So it has been an eye opener for me also. I mean, it's like you're right. We just take it for granted and all, but I mean, it is such a rich and complex issue of whole assistive technology. So it's been, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning this to you, Sunil, that I do approach many people and I say, hey, could you support this cause? And they will say, we are committed to the girl child, we are committed to education, we are committed to healthcare. I said, yeah, very good. But can you just focus on girl child with disability? Can you please focus on education for the disabled? Can you please? It is still within your charter, right? But can you go a little more deeper? Because everybody is focused on education and the girl child. But what about the girl child who's disabled, right? So I think this whole awareness and sensitivity should. So we need to move away from sympathetic, charitable, which is nice, right? But that's not what they need. So again, remind ourselves, nothing about us without us. So please include the disabled and try and serve and help their problems.
Yeah. So before we go, I'd like to ask one final question. Do you think now the time has come? Because if you look at the pandemic, there has been a techceleration, a technological acceleration, and of technologies like no-touch technologies, speech technologies, so we are already in a stage. So do you think that time has come? And if it has come, what is your roadmap for India going forward the next few years?
No, I think you're right that we've taken a leapfrog of digital here, right? And many things that would not have happened, including our conversation today, right, is being made possible. I think the networks are reaching rural areas where the masses are, right? And hence, I think for us, the ease of access is there, provided we all put this together. And you spoke about payment systems. I spoke about access to education. So if a person from the rural areas cannot travel to a school, or there is no critical size of school, they can't travel 6 kilometers to go to a place where they need a special school. I think now you can do a lot of stuff online and access. So I think this is the right time. Actually, there is no right time for some of these. I think, I would only say that it should not be left. We have workshops, everybody is committed to the cause. And then when it is over, like my conversation with you, it's forgotten, saying, yeah, I think it's a good thought, but then we get busy. But I think we owe it to them. And I think you put it very well, that who will become disabled when is unknown, right? And I think we have ignored this sector too long and given too long a lip service to it.
So I think we in the technology, one thing we have to make happen is this assistive technologies incubate. I'll also take it up. I think that because that will lead to solutions.
But Sunil, my request would be that we can feed you data.
Okay.
Would you start carrying a feature in PCQuest, right? So that we publicize many technologies. I think there are enough people who can contribute. We will put you across.
Okay, fine.
We can pick up disability by disability and cover, right, a feature, say, which technologies can help them.
Yeah.
Right. We can cover all the 21 technologies and come
Yeah.
up with some ideas. But it will be a great contribution that on this 35th year of PCQuest, you could commit to if you can.
No, I'm not paying lip service. I'm committing. So you give me that this is the problem, this is the technology, and we will show 21 technology. Let's do it. This is not talk.
Okay.
I'm game.
Okay. Done. So this has been a very productive discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for including me.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, it's been for me, it's been very enlightening. So let's hope now we have to take this forward and not end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.